Captain Jake Martinez stood on the bridge of the USS Liberty, watching the stars through the main viewing screen. His ship was 3 days out from the mining colony on Titan, carrying supplies and new workers. The journey had been quiet, just the way Jake liked it. After 20 years in space, he had learned to appreciate the peaceful moments. "Captain, we're picking up something strange on the sensors," said Commander Lisa Brooks from the tactical station. Her voice carried a tone that made Jake turn around quickly. Lisa had been with him for 5 years, and she never sounded worried without good reason. Jake walked over to her station and looked at the display. The screen showed dozens of energy signatures moving toward Earth's outer colonies. The readings were unlike anything in the human database. The ships were big, much bigger than anything humans had ever built, and they were moving fast. "How many are there?" Jake asked, his stomach starting to feel tight. "At least 50, maybe more. They're still coming into sensor range." Lisa's fingers moved across her console, trying to get more information. "Captain, these aren't human ships. The energy patterns are completely different from anything we've ever seen." Jake felt his heart rate increase. First contact with an alien species had always been possible, but most scientists thought it would happen slowly, with radio signals or peaceful exploration. This looked different. This looked like a fleet. "Open a channel to Earth Defense Command," Jake ordered. "Priority 1. We need to report this immediately." The communications officer, Lieutenant Paul Adams, worked at his station for a few moments before shaking his head. "No response, sir. The distance is too great for real-time communication. It will take 6 hours for our message to reach Earth." Jake cursed under his breath. 6 hours was too long. These alien ships would reach the outer colonies in less than 4 hours based on their current speed. He had to make a decision quickly. "Set course for the alien fleet," he said. "Best possible speed." "Sir?" Lisa looked at him with surprise. "The Liberty isn't a warship. We only have basic defensive systems." "I know what we are," Jake replied, "but we're the only human ship in the area. Someone needs to make contact with them, and it might as well be us." The USS Liberty changed course and accelerated toward the unknown fleet. Jake ordered his crew to battle stations, though he knew their small defensive weapons would be useless against ships that size. The Liberty was an exploration and supply vessel, not built for fighting. As they got closer, the alien ships became visible on the main screen. Jake had never seen anything like them. The vessels were long and curved, with smooth surfaces that seemed to glow with their own light. They moved through space like living things, graceful and fluid. Each ship was at least 3 times larger than the Liberty. "Captain, we're being scanned," reported the sensor operator, Ensign Susan Clark. "Their scanners are much more advanced than ours. They're probably learning everything about our ship and our technology." Jake nodded. He had expected this. Any species that could build ships like these would have superior technology. The question was whether they were friendly or hostile. "Try to open a communication channel," Jake ordered. "Use all frequencies." Paul worked at his station for several minutes. "No response, sir. Either they can't understand our signals, or they're choosing not to answer." The alien fleet continued, moving toward Earth's colonies. Jake watched the tactical display and realized they were heading straight for the mining stations around Jupiter. Thousands of human workers lived on those stations. Suddenly, the communication system came alive, with an alien voice. The words were spoken in perfect English, which surprised everyone on the bridge. "Human vessel, you will stop your approach immediately," the voice said. It was cold and commanding, with no hint of friendliness. "You are in violation of Zephyrian space." Jake looked at Lisa, who raised her eyebrows. "Zephyrian space?" These aliens were claiming human territory as their own. "This is Captain Jake Martinez of the United Earth vessel USS Liberty," Jake replied. "These are human colonies you're approaching. We don't recognize any Zephyrian claims to this space." There was silence for a moment. Then the alien voice spoke. Again. This time it sounded amused. "Human colonies are now Zephyrian colonies. Your species will submit to Zephyrian rule, or your colonies will be destroyed. You have one of your Earth days to evacuate all military vessels and surrender control of your worlds. The communication channel closed. Jake stared at the screen, trying to process what he had just heard. These aliens, these Zephyrians, were demanding the surrender of human space. They weren't here for peaceful contact. They were here for conquest. "Captain, more ships are appearing on sensors," Lisa reported. Her voice was tight with stress. "The fleet is much larger than we thought. I'm counting over 200 vessels now." Jake felt the weight of the situation settling on his shoulders. 200 alien warships against humanity's small defense fleet. Earth's military had maybe 30 ships that could be called warships, and most of those were designed for system patrol, not major battles. "Get me a full scan of their fleet," he ordered. "I want to know everything we can learn about their weapons, their shields, their weaknesses. Anything that might help Earth Defense Command." The crew worked quickly, gathering as much information as possible. The alien ships were powerful, with energy weapons and shield systems far beyond human technology. They seemed confident, almost casual in their approach to human space. "Sir, should we retreat to Earth?" asked Paul. "We could warn the colonies and help with the evacuation." Jake thought about it for a moment. The smart thing would be to run, to get back to Earth and help, prepare defenses, but something inside him rebelled against the idea of running from bullies, even alien bullies with superior technology. "No," he said finally. "We stay and watch. Someone needs to see what these Zephyrians can do. If humanity is going to fight back, we need intelligence." The USS Liberty fell back to a safe distance and continued monitoring the alien fleet. Jake hoped he was making the right decision. He hoped that Earth would find a way to fight back against this threat. But as he watched the massive alien ships moving toward human colonies, he couldn't shake the feeling that humanity was about to face its greatest challenge. Admiral Kate Sullivan received the emergency message from Captain Martinez while she was reviewing defense reports in her office on Luna Station. The message was 6 hours old by the time it reached Earth, but the news hit her like a physical blow. Alien contact, and it wasn't peaceful. Kate had spent her entire career preparing for this possibility, but she had always hoped first contact would be different. She had imagined scientists talking to each other, sharing knowledge and culture. Instead, she was facing an invasion fleet demanding humanity's surrender. She immediately called an emergency meeting of Earth Defense Command. Within an hour, the top military leaders of humanity were gathered in the secure conference room. The mood was grim as Kate shared the intelligence from the USS Liberty. 200 ships, said General Robert Hayes, shaking his head. "Our entire fleet is 37 vessels, and most of those are patrol ships, not true warships." "What about our orbital defense platforms?" asked Admiral Tom Wilson. "The ones around Earth and Mars?" "They might stop a few ships," Kate replied. "But not 200. These aliens have energy weapons and shields that are far beyond anything we've developed." The room fell silent. Everyone understood the situation. Humanity's military had been built to handle pirates, smugglers, and the occasional dispute between colonies. They had never expected to face a full-scale alien invasion. "There might be another option," said a voice from the back of the room. Everyone turned to look at Carlos Rodriguez, the chief engineer for the Advanced Weapons Project. Carlos was a quiet man who rarely spoke in meetings, but when he did, people listened. "What do you mean?" Kate asked. Carlos stood up and activated a holographic display. The image showed a massive ship design unlike anything in the current human fleet. Where human ships were sleek and efficient, this design was thick and angular, like a flying fortress. "For the past 10 years, my team has been working on a different approach to space warfare," Carlos explained. "Everyone in the galaxy seems to use energy weapons, plasma cannons, laser arrays, particle beams. They build their defenses around stopping energy attacks, and," General Hayes prompted, "we went in a completely different direction. Instead of trying to match alien energy technology, we focused on something much simpler. We throw things. Very big things. Very fast." The holographic display changed to show the ship's weapons. Instead of the usual energy weapon ports, the ship had 12 massive cylindrical structures along its hull. "These are magnetic railguns," Carlos continued. They use powerful electromagnets to accelerate solid projectiles to incredible speeds. We're talking about tungsten rods weighing several tons, moving at 12% of light speed. Admiral, Wilson leaned forward. What kind of damage would that cause? Think of it this way, Carlos said. A tungsten rod moving that fast carries the kinetic energy of a small nuclear weapon. But instead of an explosion that spreads out in all directions, all that energy gets focused into a single point of impact. Kate studied the ship design. It was impressive, but she could see problems. How many of these ships do we have? One, Carlos admitted. The USS Defiance. We finished construction last month, but we haven't had time for full testing. One ship against 200? General Hayes sounded skeptical. Even with super weapons, those aren't good odds. Maybe they don't need to be good odds, said Lieutenant Amy Foster, who had been quiet until now. She was young, barely 25, but she was one of the best tactical analysts in the fleet. Sir, may I? Kate nodded, and Amy stood up. I've been studying the sensor data from Captain Martinez. These alien ships have powerful energy shields, but look at this. She manipulated the holographic display to show the shield readings. Their shields are designed to deflect energy attacks. They work by absorbing incoming energy and redirecting it away from the ship. But kinetic weapons don't work the same way. A solid object moving at relativistic speeds doesn't care about energy shields. It just punches right through them. The room was quiet as everyone considered this. It seemed too simple, too easy, but sometimes the simplest solutions were the best ones. There's another advantage, Carlos added. Our railguns have incredible range. Energy weapons lose power over distance, but a tungsten rod keeps its momentum. We can engage targets from much farther away than they can shoot back. Kate looked around the room at her officers. She could see hope starting to replace despair in their faces. It was a long shot, but it was better than nothing. How long would it take to get the Defiance ready for combat? She asked. She's ready now, Carlos replied. All we need is a crew willing to test unproven weapons in actual combat. I'll take her, said Captain Dan Walker, who had been listening quietly from his seat near the window. Dan was one of Earth's most experienced ship commanders with 15 years of combat experience against pirates and raiders. Dan, this isn't like fighting pirates, Kate warned. You'll be facing an entire alien fleet with superior technology and overwhelming numbers. Dan smiled grimly. Admiral, I've spent my entire career being outnumbered and outgunned. At least, this time I'll have the biggest guns in the fight. Kate made her decision. Very well, Captain Walker, you're hereby assigned command of the USS Defiance. Carlos, I want you and your engineering team on that ship. Amy, you're the new weapons officer. Ma'am, I've never served on a combat vessel, Amy protested. You understand the weapons better than anyone except Carlos, Kate replied. Besides, everyone on that ship is going to be doing something they've never done before. As the meeting broke up, Kate pulled Carlos aside. Tell me honestly, do you think this will work? Carlos was quiet for a moment. Admiral, I've run every simulation I can think of. The math says it should work. But we've never tested the railguns against real energy shields, and we've never fired them in actual combat conditions. So you don't know? I know that it's our only chance, Carlos said. If we try to fight them with conventional weapons, we'll lose for certain. With the Defiance, we at least have a possibility of winning. Kate nodded. Sometimes a possibility was all you could ask for. She looked out the window at Earth, hanging in space like a blue and white jewel. Whatever happened in the next few days would determine humanity's future among the stars. The USS Defiance launched from the shipyard 12 hours later, carrying humanity's hopes and the most powerful weapons ever built. As Kate watched the massive ship disappear into the darkness of space, she whispered a prayer for its crew and for all of humanity. Admiral Vextar stood on the command deck of his flagship, the stellar dominance watching the primitive human colonies grow larger on the viewing screen. The Zephyrian fleet had taken position around Earth's moon, a perfect location to demonstrate their power to the entire human species. Vextar was tall, even for a Zephyrian, with the pale blue skin and silver eyes that marked him as nobility. He had conquered 17 different species in his career, and humans would be number 18. Each conquest had followed the same pattern: overwhelming display of force, demands for surrender, and then either submission or destruction. The Bo. Humans have responded to our ultimatum, reported Commander Thylon from the communication station. Thylon was younger than Vextar, with darker skin and the eager manner of someone still trying to prove himself. "Let me hear their response," Vextar said, though he already knew what it would be. They always tried to negotiate first. The human voice came through the speakers, calm and professional. "This is Admiral Kate Sullivan of Earth Defense Command. We reject your demands for surrender. Human space belongs to humanity, and we will defend it." Vextar allowed himself a small smile. "Predictable. How many ships do they have in their fleet?" "Intelligence reports 37 vessels, Admiral. Most are patrol ships with minimal weapons, nothing that could threaten our shields." "Excellent. We'll destroy half their fleet as a demonstration, then give them another chance to surrender. If they refuse again, we'll eliminate the rest and begin occupation of their worlds." Vextar had used this strategy many times before. Most species surrendered after seeing their military destroyed. It saved time and resources, which the Zephyrian Empire appreciated. "Admiral, we're detecting a single human ship approaching our position," reported the sensor operator. "It's larger than their other vessels, but still primitive by our standards." Vextar looked at the tactical display. The human ship was indeed larger than the others, but its design was crude and angular. It looked like something built by a species that had barely mastered space travel. "What are its weapons?" he asked. "Unknown, sir. We're not detecting any energy weapon signatures. No plasma cannons, no laser arrays, no particle beams, either. Their weapons are completely powered down, or they're using some sort of technology we don't recognize." Commander Thylon laughed. "Maybe they forgot to install weapons. These humans seem barely capable of building functional spacecraft." Vextar studied the approaching ship more carefully. Something about it bothered him, though he couldn't identify what. The hull was thick, much thicker than necessary for a normal spacecraft. The strange cylindrical structures along its sides served no obvious purpose. It almost looked like the ship had been built to take damage rather than avoid it. "What's their approach vector?" he asked. "They're coming in slowly, sir. Current speed suggests they'll reach weapon range in 47 minutes. Good. Let them come closer. I want the entire human species to see what happens to ships that challenge the Zephyrian Empire." Vextar opened a communication channel to his fleet. "All vessels maintain formation. Allow the human ship to approach. When it reaches optimal range, we'll destroy it quickly and efficiently. Make sure all gun cameras are recording. Earth Defense Command will want to see exactly what happened to their ship." The Zephyrian fleet held position as the human vessel approached. Vextar could see the anticipation on his crew's faces. They had done this so many times that destroying enemy ships had become routine, almost boring. At least this time they were dealing with a new species. "Admiral, the human ship is broadcasting on all frequencies," Thylon reported. "What are they saying?" "It appears to be a warning to other human vessels to stay away from this area. They're also transmitting tactical data about our fleet." Vextar frowned. "They're gathering intelligence. Interesting. Most species either attack immediately or try to negotiate. These humans are taking notes. Should we jam their communications?" "No. Let them broadcast. It won't matter what they learn about us. After today, there won't be enough human ships left to use that intelligence." The human vessel continued its approach, and Vextar noted that it was indeed heavily armored. The hull plating was much thicker than anything he had seen before, except maybe on cargo ships designed to survive asteroid impacts. But this was clearly a warship, not a freighter. "Range to target?" he asked. 15 minutes until optimal firing range, sir." Vextar activated the fleet-wide communication system. "All vessels, prepare to fire on my command. Target the human ship's engines first. I want them disabled, not destroyed. We may be able to learn something useful from their technology before we finish them." The bridge crew worked efficiently, preparing for what they expected to be a very short battle. Zephyrian energy weapons were among the most advanced in the galaxy, capable of overloading any known shield system and melting through the strongest armor. "Sir, I'm getting some unusual readings from the human ship," the sensor operator reported. There's significant electromagnetic activity along those cylindrical structures. It's almost like they're charging some sort of capacitor system. Capacitors. For what? Vextar asked. They have no energy weapons. Unknown, sir. The energy patterns don't match anything in our database. Commander Thylon looked worried for the first time. Admiral, what if they have some sort of new weapon we haven't encountered before? Vextar dismissed the concern with a wave of his hand. Thylon, we've fought dozens of species across the galaxy. Energy weapons, kinetic missiles, plasma torpedoes, exotic matter bombs. We've seen everything there is to see. These humans are primitives who barely reached their own moon a few centuries ago. What could they possibly have developed that would threaten us? The human ship was now close enough that its details were visible on the main screen. Vextar could see the thick armor plating, the unusual design, the strange cylindrical structures that still puzzled his sensors. Whatever those structures were, they were clearly important to the ship's function. 5 minutes to optimal range, reported the weapons officer. All vessels, lock on to target, Vextar commanded. Prepare to fire on my mark. 200 Zephyrian. Warships turned their weapons toward the single human vessel. Energy cannons charged to full power, ready to unleash devastating firepower. The crew of the Stellar Dominance watched their displays with professional interest, waiting for the order to fire. Vextar looked at the human ship one last time. It was close enough now that he could see small details on its hull. The design was definitely crude compared to Zephyrian engineering, but there was something about it that suggested careful thought and planning. These humans might be primitive, but they weren't stupid. Admiral, the human ship is hailing us, Thylon reported. Put them through. A human voice came through the speakers, calm and confident. This is Captain Dan Walker of the USS Defiance. You have threatened human colonies and demanded our surrender. We reject your demands and are prepared to defend our space. Vextar smiled. The captain sounded brave, but bravery wouldn't save him from 200 warships. Captain Walker, you are outnumbered 200 to 1. Surrender now, and we will allow you to return to Earth with news of our power. Negative, Walker replied. We're going to show you something new today. The communication channel closed. Vextar shook his head at human foolishness and gave the order that would seal their fate. Captain Dan Walker stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance, watching the alien fleet spread across his viewing screen like deadly flowers. 200 ships, each one larger and more advanced than anything humanity had ever built. Any sane person would be terrified, but Dan felt oddly calm. All stations report ready, Captain, said Lieutenant Amy Foster from the weapons console. Her voice was steady, though Dan could see the tension in her shoulders. This was her first real combat mission, and she was facing impossible odds. Thank you, Amy. Susan, what's our range to the nearest targets? Navigator Susan Clark checked her instruments. 12,000 kilometers and closing, sir. We'll be in their optimal firing range in 2 minutes. Dan nodded. The Zephyrians were letting him approach, probably planning to disable his ship rather than destroy it outright. They wanted to make an example of humanity, to show Earth's colonies what happened to those who resisted the Zephyrian Empire. Carlos, how are our railguns? Dan asked. Engineer Carlos Rodriguez was monitoring the weapon systems from his station near the back of the bridge. All 12 guns are charged and ready, Captain. Tungsten rods are loaded and the magnetic coils are at full power. Amy, have you selected targets? The young weapons officer studied her tactical display. Yes, sir. I've prioritized the largest ships first. If our intelligence is correct, those will be their command vessels and heavy cruisers. Dan looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. They were scared, but they were ready. These men and women had volunteered for this mission knowing they might not return home. They deserved a captain who would give them the best chance possible. Paul, open a channel to the alien fleet. Communications officer Paul Adams worked at his station. Channel open, sir. This is Captain Dan Walker of the USS Defiance. You have threatened human colonies and demanded our surrender. We reject your demands and are prepared to defend our space. The alien commander's response was exactly what Dan had expected. Arrogant, dismissive, offering one last chance to surrender. Dan cut the communication and turned to his weapons officer. Amy, the moment they open fire, you are authorized to return fire. Show them what human engineering can do. The Zephyrian fleet fired first, as Dan had known they would. Beams of blue energy lanced out from dozens of ships, striking the Defiance's thick armor. The ship shook under the impact, but the armor held. Warning lights flashed on the bridge as systems reported minor damage, but nothing critical. Hull, breaches on decks 7 and 12, reported the damage control officer. Emergency containment fields are holding. We can take several more hits like that. Dan smiled grimly. The alien energy weapons were powerful, but human armor was thicker than anything they had encountered before. The Defiance had been built like a fortress, designed to absorb punishment that would destroy other ships. Return fire, Dan ordered. Amy's hands moved over her controls with practiced precision. Firing railgun 1 through 6, targets locked. The first salvo from the USS Defiance was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. 6 tungsten rods, each weighing 3 tons and moving at 12% of light speed, streaked toward the alien fleet. There was no flash of energy weapons, no visible beam of light, just 6 dark projectiles moving faster than most sensors could track. The lead Zephyrian ship, a massive dreadnought that had been preparing to fire again, took a direct hit. The tungsten rod punched through the ship's energy shields as if they weren't there, passed through the entire length of the vessel and emerged from the other side in a spray of metal and atmosphere. Dan watched the tactical display as the alien ship's energy signature collapsed. 1 shot, 1 kill. The rod had carried so much kinetic energy that it had essentially vaporized everything it touched inside the ship. Target destroyed, Amy reported, her voice filled with amazement. Railguns 7 through 12 ready to fire. Fire at will, Dan ordered. The second salvo took out 3 more alien ships. The tungsten rods moved so fast that the Zephyrians had no time to evade. Their energy shields, designed to deflect plasma and laser fire, provided no protection against solid matter moving at relativistic speeds. On the screen, Dan could see the alien fleet beginning to panic. Ships were breaking formation, trying to scatter and present more difficult targets. But the railguns had incredible range, and Amy was proving to be an excellent shot. Incoming message from the alien fleet, Paul reported. Let's hear it. The alien commander's voice came through the speakers, but this time it sounded different. The arrogance was gone, replaced by shock and growing fear. Human vessel, cease fire immediately. Your weapons violate the accepted rules of galactic warfare. Dan almost laughed. Rules of galactic warfare? Paul, respond on all frequencies so their entire fleet can hear. Channel open, sir. This is Captain Walker. You came to our space, threatened our people, and demanded our surrender. There are no rules in a fight for survival. If you don't like our weapons, you should have stayed home. Dan cut the channel and turned back to Amy. Continue firing. Target their largest ships first. The battle, if it could be called that, continued for another 20 minutes. The USS Defiance methodically destroyed ship after ship with its railguns. The alien energy weapons continued to pound the human ship, gradually wearing down its armor, but not fast enough to save the Zephyrian fleet. Captain, we're down to 6 functional railguns, Carlos reported. The others have minor damage from the vibration of repeated firing. I can have them back online in 30 minutes. How many targets are left? Dan asked. Amy checked her display. 47 ships, sir. Most of them are trying to retreat, but we can still reach them. Dan considered his options. He could continue the attack and potentially destroy the entire alien fleet. But that might not be the best choice for humanity in the long run. Better to let some of them escape to carry word of this battle back to their empire. Cease fire, he ordered. Open a channel to the remaining alien ships. When the communication was established, Dan spoke clearly and firmly. This is Captain Walker. We could destroy the rest of your fleet, but we choose not to. Return to your space and tell your leaders what happened here. Tell them that humanity is not as primitive as you thought. Tell them that if they want peace, we're willing to talk, but if they want war, we'll give them more of the same. The alien response came quickly, the commander's voice shaking with shock and anger. "This is not over, human. The Zephyrian Empire has thousands of ships. You have won one battle, nothing more." "Maybe," Dan replied. "But we've shown your people that you're not invincible. We've shown them that energy shields and plasma cannons aren't the only way to fight. Word of this battle will spread, and every species you've conquered will start to wonder if they need to stay conquered." The surviving Zephyrian ships retreated at maximum speed, leaving behind the wreckage of their once mighty fleet. Dan watched them go, knowing that this was just the beginning. Humanity had announced its presence to the galaxy not with words, but with tungsten rods traveling at impossible speeds. "Paul, send a message to Earth Defense Command," Dan said. "Tell them the mission was successful. Tell them to start building more railgun ships. We're going to need them." As the USS Defiance turned toward home, Dan looked out at the stars and wondered what the future would bring. Humanity had crossed a line today, had shown the galaxy that Earth's children were not to be underestimated. The age of human expansion had begun, and it would be written with kinetic weapons and unbreakable will. Admiral Vextar sat in the emergency medical bay of his damaged flagship, staring at reports that seemed impossible to believe. Of the 200 ships in his fleet, only 47 remained functional. 153 Zephyrian vessels had been destroyed by a single human ship using weapons that shouldn't exist. Commander Thylon entered the medical bay, his arm in a support sling from injuries sustained when their ship was hit. His face was pale, and his silver eyes showed the shock that all the survivors were feeling. "Admiral, we've completed our damage assessment," Thylon reported quietly. "Casualties across the surviving fleet are minimal, but ship losses are catastrophic. The Empire has never suffered a defeat like this." Vextar looked up from the medical reports showing the crew members who had been injured when the human projectile punched through their shields and hull. "How is that possible, Thylon? We had every advantage. Superior numbers, advanced technology, proven weapon systems. How did one primitive human ship destroy our fleet?" "Our science officers have been analyzing the wreckage," Thylon said. "The humans weren't using energy weapons at all. They were firing solid projectiles at incredible speeds. Our shields are designed to deflect energy attacks, not physical objects moving at 12% of light speed." Vextar closed his eyes and tried to understand how his career could have ended in such disaster. "Contact the Empire immediately. High Command needs to know what happened here." 3 days later, the surviving Zephyrian ships limped into their home system. News of the defeat had already reached the Empire through long-range communications, and Admiral Vexitar was immediately summoned to appear before the High Council. The council chamber was a massive hall carved from black stone, with 12 towering seats arranged in a semicircle. The most powerful leaders of the Zephyrian Empire sat in those seats, their silver eyes reflecting the anger and shock that Vextar's report had caused. "Admiral Vexitar," spoke High Counselor Zarathul from the center seat, "you have brought shame upon the Empire. How do you explain the loss of 153 warships to a single enemy vessel?" Vexitar stood straight, despite his injuries. "High Counselor, the humans have developed a completely new type of weapon. While every other species in the galaxy focused on energy-based warfare, humans perfected kinetic weapons. They fire solid projectiles at speeds we thought impossible." "And our shields provided no protection?" asked Counselor Mordak from the left side. "None, sir. The projectiles passed through our energy shields as if they weren't there. Our defensive systems are completely useless against this type of attack." The council members looked at each other with growing concern. The Zephyrian Empire had conquered dozens of worlds using their superior energy weapons and shield technology. If those advantages were meaningless against human weapons, their entire military strategy needed to be reconsidered. "What do you recommend, Admiral?" asked High Counselor Zarathul. Vextar had thought about this question during the long journey home. "We have 3 options, High Counselor. First, we can develop new defensive systems that protect against kinetic weapons. Second, we can build our own kinetic weapons and fight the humans on their own terms. Third, we can negotiate a peace treaty and avoid further conflict." "Peace?" Counselor Mordak's voice was filled with disgust. "The Empire does not negotiate with primitives. With respect, sir, these humans are not primitives, Vextar replied. They may be new to space travel, but their weapons technology is revolutionary. More importantly, word of our defeat will spread throughout the galaxy. Every species we have conquered will learn that the Empire can be beaten. The High Council fell silent as they considered the implications. Their empire was built on fear and overwhelming force. If that image of invincibility was shattered, rebellions might begin on every conquered world. Meanwhile, on Earth, Admiral Kate Sullivan was dealing with her own set of problems. News of the victory had spread throughout human space, and everyone wanted to know how they could defend against future alien attacks. We need at least 50 more ships like the Defiance, she told the emergency session of Earth's government. The Zephyrians will be back, and they won't underestimate us again. Plus, there might be other alien species out there who see us as a threat. President Maria Santos, Earth's elected leader, looked worried. Admiral, building 50 battleships will take years and cost more than our entire annual budget. How can we possibly afford such a massive military buildup? We can't afford not to build them, Kate replied. The galaxy knows about us now. Some species might want to trade and cooperate, but others will see us as a threat to their power. We need to be strong enough to protect ourselves. Carlos Rodriguez, who had become something of a celebrity after designing the railgun systems, raised his hand. Madam President, we don't need to build 50 ships exactly like the Defiance. Now that we understand the principles, we can design smaller, cheaper vessels with fewer railguns. A ship with 4 railguns would still be deadly against traditional energy weapon fleets. The President nodded. How long would it take to build a fleet of these smaller ships? 2 years for the first 10 ships if we start construction immediately, Carlos answered. We'll need to train crews, establish supply lines for the tungsten rods, and build new shipyards designed for this type of vessel. Captain Dan Walker, who was attending the meeting via video link from the Defiance, spoke up from the screen. There's something else we need to consider. Other species are going to want this technology. Some will try to steal it. Others will try to buy it. We need to decide how we're going to handle those requests. Admiral Sullivan looked thoughtful. Dan makes a good point. Our kinetic weapons give us a huge advantage right now, but that advantage won't last forever. Eventually, other species will develop their own versions. So what do we do? Asked the President. We share the technology with species that want to be our allies, Kate replied. Every world that the Zephyrians conquered is a potential friend. If we help them build kinetic weapons, they can defend themselves against future Zephyrian attacks. Over the following months, humanity began to transform from a small collection of colonies into a major galactic power. Ships from dozens of species arrived at Earth, carrying diplomats who wanted to establish trade relationships and military alliances. The Calothi, a species that had been conquered by the Zephyrians 50 years earlier, were among the first to request military assistance. Captain Jake Martinez, now promoted to admiral, led the first human fleet to Calothi space, carrying supplies to help them build their own kinetic weapons. Admiral Martinez, said Chancellor Vithara of the Calothi government, our people have dreamed of freedom for decades. Your technology gives us hope that we can resist the Zephyrians if they return. Jake smiled as he watched Calothi engineers examining the railgun designs. Chancellor, freedom isn't something you get from technology. It's something you fight for. We're happy to give you the tools, but you'll have to do the fighting. Back in Zephyrian space, the High Council was still debating how to respond to the human threat. Some wanted immediate war, others preferred caution, but their decision was made for them when reports began arriving of rebellions on conquered worlds. The Calothi had declared independence and were building kinetic weapons. The Nexari had destroyed their Zephyrian garrison and were requesting human military advisors. 3 other species had simply stopped responding to Zephyrian communications. The Empire is falling apart, reported Intelligence Chief Colverin to the High Council. Every species we've conquered now knows we can be defeated. They're all trying to build human-style weapons. High Counselor Zarathul looked older than her years. How long before they succeed? 6 months to a year, depending on their industrial capacity, Colverin replied. The humans are actively helping them, providing technical assistance and raw materials. The High Council faced a choice that no Zephyrian leader had ever confronted. They could fight a war against dozens of species armed with kinetic weapons, or they could negotiate from a position of weakness. In the end, they chose negotiation. 6 months after the battle that shocked the galaxy, representatives from the Zephyrian Empire arrived at Earth to discuss peace terms. The age of Zephyrian domination was over, and the age of human expansion had begun. Admiral Vextar, no longer in disgrace but serving as a military advisor to the peace negotiations, met privately with Admiral Kate Sullivan during a break in the talks. "Your species has changed everything," he told her. "The balance of power that existed for thousands of years is gone. Every species in the galaxy is now scrambling to develop kinetic weapons." Kate nodded. Change was inevitable. Maybe it's better this way. Instead of one empire conquering everyone else, now all species have a chance to be free. Vextar looked out the window at Earth, the blue planet that had produced the weapons that ended his empire. "Perhaps you're right, Admiral. Perhaps freedom is better than order, even if it makes the galaxy a more dangerous place." As the negotiations continued, humanity prepared for its role as a major galactic power. New ships were being built, new alliances were being formed, and new colonies were being established. The galaxy would never be the same, and it was all because someone had decided to